Okay, welcome back. It's my pleasure to introduce Doron Friedman, who you already have heard in the previous talk. Actually, if I tell you a bit about his background, he kind of embodies the title of this conference, which is Exploring the Intersection of AI and the Metaverse. And this is exactly the experience of Doron, who is Associate Professor at the Reichman University, and he's the head of the Advanced Reality Lab. He did a PhD in computer science in Tel Aviv University, studying AI-based cinematography, and then in virtual environments, and then he did a postdoc at University College London, working on virtual environments and navigation through brain-computer interfaces. So he's also worked in the last years in different European and international projects working in virtual reality, presence, advanced human-computer interfaces, and LLM-based virtual humans. Apart from this, he has some experience as entrepreneur in areas also of intelligent systems and the internet. So he's going to tell us today about his recent work on virtual patients meet virtual therapists. So welcome.
Thank you, Mavi. You are going to be the one who stops me? You give me a 5 minutes cue? Okay, whatever we cover is good. Thanks. So I'll be talking about virtual humans, AI, and VR. But specifically, I want you to look at this picture and tell me what is missing in this picture. Any ideas what is wrong with this picture? What is missing? Everything? Oh, humans. Yes. So basically, yes, there are no humans in the picture, you might have noticed. And so if I told you 20 years ago or 10 years ago that, we'll be doing research on automatic therapists taking care of automatic patients, you would think it's a gimmick or it's a joke, but actually it's become quite mainstream using AI this way. So we're going to talk about that as well, how we found ourselves working on these kinds of research questions. But before that, so even if you're not interested in mental health, I hope this will be relevant to you, because I think, again, as we discussed earlier, so most people, especially outside academia, when they think of AI now, they think of GPT. They think about a text-based chatbot. And of course, we in this room know that it will be much more interesting and completely different when we start meeting these creatures, not only as text or voice, but actually as embodied avatars that we meet in virtual reality, and we stare them in the eyes, and etc. All these effects that I hope all of you have encountered in VR. So, before we get into this mental health, I want to show you what we mean by a vision of maybe. So some of you know that we've done this performance actually with Albert Einstein taking part in a conference together with Mel and David Chalmers. I'll show you a segment from another performance that we did 2 years ago. And again, so the idea is to have virtual humans around us in mixed reality. Because the audience did not have mixed reality devices, we show, you will see it from the point of view of a person wearing a mixed reality device sitting in the front row, okay? And this is what it looks like. I'll show parts of this.
Hi, are you the famous Dr. Sigmund Freud?
Okay, so Professor Gurit Birnbaum is a world expert on intimacy and romantic relationship. And so we had a meeting with Gurit to have a discussion with Sigmund Freud. And again, Gurit didn't see this person, but anyone wearing an augmented reality device could see Freud. And
hello there. Yes, I am playing the role of Sigmund Freud, the famous psychoanalyst. How are you doing tonight?
Great, thank you. What inspired you to be a psychologist?
Well, I have always been fascinated by human behavior and the workings of the mind. I believe that understanding the human mind and its complexities can help us lead better lives and solve many societal problems. That's why I decided to delve deeper into the field of psychology and make it my life's work.
Can you tell us about your major findings?
So actually,
What
in the
do
interest
you-
of time,
This person.
As Freud, I would advise this person to delve into their unconscious desires, examine their childhood traumas, and perhaps consider the possibility of some repressed sexual impulses.
So, if I fantasize a lot about sex, what does it say about me?
It means nothing, dear. After all, sex is the most basic and natural human drive. You're probably just a healthy young man with a lot of energy who needs an appropriate outlet to channel it. But if you have any particular kinks, I might just have to charge you extra for that session.
May I share a dream?
okay, for the interest of time, I will not show you the whole thing. Later on, she tells a dream, and there's really actually a very interesting live interpretation of the dream. So I think, again, in terms of, so we can do it today in the lab, as you can see. This is 2 years ago with GPT-3 or ChatGPT or one of these versions. And of course, it might take a bit until we have this kind of form factor of sunglasses, etc. But I think it's going to be very interesting. And so the question is now, what does this mean for more serious applications in the area of mental health? And we started working on this with colleagues. Actually, Professor Anat Klomik-Bornstein is the clinical psychologist, and in this case, Tal and Tom are the master students. And this was actually something we started doing in COVID. You might remember we had this world pandemic, and we already realized by then that there's a shortage, a worldwide actually shortage of therapists, professional caregivers. A lot of people are in distress. And the idea was not yet to have an automated therapist, but the idea is to train pseudo-professionals in providing, basic services such as resilience skills, helping people. There was also an element of detecting people who are in high levels of distress and detecting signs of suicide. And the idea is that but the idea is that all these skills called resilience skills, and again, I'm not the psychologist, so it's really not my area of expertise, but apparently there's these skills which you can practice, just like you go to the gym and you work on a specific muscle, you practice it in society. So the idea is you can practice it with VR characters, and well, let's see a little bit of what it looks like.
היי, נעים להכיר.
נעים להכיר. אני טל, ומה שנעשה היום ביחד זה נבנה ביחד את תוכנית החוסן שלך. מקודם נשאל מה שלומך.
Okay, now in this case you see that we didn't even have AI. This is what we call a Wizard of Oz. Okay, so basically you have the operator can click all kinds of buttons to decide what the character says, and surprisingly even today this is a very, very practical solution for a lot of scenarios, because there's many times there's a human operator anyway, and with all due respect to AI, it's very unpredictable. So one option is to use this kind of Wizard of Oz, but of course we wanted to take it further, and so we use all kinds of dialogue-based systems. And here also I want to mention another option that you have. You don't have to go straight into talking to Claude or GPT or Gemini or one of these guys. A very useful avenue is so-called structured dialogue, which means that you want to use the best AI to understand what the participant wants to say, but you restrict in advance what the AI says. Okay? And for many scenarios, this is very useful. In fact, I'll show you not the mental health scenario. I'll show you an example from something we did for the Tel Aviv Museum. This is even not in VR, but I think it's a very nice work that Maya Shekel, Maya is the creator, she figured out how to have this structured dialogue. I think this will become clear. So this was some exhibition about NFTs, and the idea was to have like an AI that talks to you about NFTs.
I'm Tama, and I'm here to help you understand a bit more about the NFT world. A new article or post about NFTs is published every second, and the Collins Dictionary even defined NFT as the new 2021 term. So, let's start from the beginning. Would you like to know what NFTs are?
How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. I was asked to speak about my favorite subject all day, NFTs. Does it get any better than this? In any case, would you like to ask me about NFTs?
What are the acronyms of NFT?
NFT are non-fungible tokens, meaning they are not interchangeable. Want to know which kinds of NFTs exist?
You're very pretty.
Thank you. If only I had an NFT for every time someone said that to me. And since we
Okay, so I think you get the point about structured dialogue, okay? You want to understand what the participant says, but control the conversation. This is very important in many practical scenarios and applications. Anyway, but of course, these days, and already a few years ago, we realized that it's not enough to have, avatars and pre-recorded talk. We can start thinking about automated therapy, whatever that means. But of course, the main question is, can you trust them? And especially a few years ago, I mean, now it's anyway happening. My understanding is that this is the first use that people are making with GPT, is talking to it as a consultant. But certainly several years ago when we started this research, we were very concerned about the question, how do you measure the quality of a specific AI agent in terms of delivering a session, a counseling session. So, when you talk about deep neural networks, they're very complicated to understand. But if it's a classifier, it's very straightforward to define. If it's supposed to distinguish between cats and dogs, well, you can measure, short pictures of cats and dogs, and you see how accurate it is, whether it's a good model or not. When it comes to things like conversation, open-ended dialogue, therapy, but again, many other soft domains that are very relevant to everyday life, it's much more difficult. It's a general problem with generative AI, okay? Even if it's generating images, like what is a beautiful cat? If it's an agent that talks to you, it's not about right or wrong, right? There could be many correct answers. Which one is better? So evaluating this is a very, very important problem, okay, measuring. Now, in this room, maybe people who are not working in the AI community, they can say, well, it's very easy. You do a human study, right? Well, the problem is that AI is moving so fast that nobody can rely on human studies. There are a lot of so-called hyperparameters. It's not just about an AI model. There's a lot of options. You can choose models. You can choose hyperparameters. You can choose, training sets, whatever. There's so many options. And to be honest, it's a black art. Nobody really knows what will be working the best. So if you wait to have a human study on every version, the AI field wouldn't have moved so fast. And this is why there is a huge effort on developing metrics for quality. And now, if you think about it, these metrics of quality are basically trying to build automated humans, right? Because eventually these AI systems are for humans. So there is a race in the AI industry to try to understand what people would have said. Would people have liked this image? Would people have liked this? Or in our case, would this counselor be considered optimal or sufficient? So this is something we did with Stav is the lead computer science student. Kfir is a colleague in an NLP expert. Momi is a PhD student who's also a clinical psychologist. And so let's go a little bit into this study. When we started this study, something like 4 or 5 years ago, basically this problem of evaluation of text, the holy grail or the state of the art was this metric called MOV. Remember, these guys mostly started with automatic translation. So in automatic translation, you start counting the words that you expect to see in the translation, and you can do some probability, and there were a lot of metrics based on that. Of course, when you go to generative AI, the probabilities drop because you have no idea what a person is going to say. And so this kind of metric, again, we don't have to get very technical, but you can see that we measure what a human expert would say, not in one sample, because you also want diversity. So you take what an expert would say in, I don't know, 10,000 sessions or 10,000 sentences of an expert, and you compare the distribution of the AI model with the distribution of the expert. And if the more the distributions are similar, that's what this figure comes to illustrate, that the higher your score. So this is called MOV, and Stavs thought he had an easy master's thesis project, which is to, basically take some data set of clinical sessions and compute this MOV result, and that will be his master's thesis. Unfortunately, when he ran MOV, the results were terrible. Basically, what you see here, he developed 3 types of therapists with simple prompts, but also validated by humans, and also very clearly one of them is very good, one of them is mediocre, and one of them is very bad. Okay, saying things that any therapist shouldn't say. And MOV did not distinguish. You say it's not only MOV, it's all these metrics you see. For some reason, they have names of colors in French, so it's bleu and rouge. But anyway, most of them do not distinguish between the 3 types of therapists, the 3 qualities. And MOV, which was a little better, but worked on the opposite direction. The higher MOV is better. So it said that the expert is worse in terms of the metric. So we realized the metric that was state-of-the-art then, and still is a general metric, is not good enough for what we want. And then we came up with this idea, which again, in retrospect, the whole world is moving in that direction. We said, well, we will develop virtual patients, and they will have virtual sessions with the AI therapists. And the punchline is not only they have these discussions between them, but they will also rate the therapists. I'll show you how it works. Right, so Stav developed this platform with 96 types of patients. You see there's gender, age, so it's all the combinatoric versions of gender, age, what type of problem you're suffering from, etc. And so we have 96 patients, we have 3 types of therapists, and so we have a lot of conversations. All of them are simple ChatGPT, GPT 3.5 is ChatGPT with a simple prompt. So basically they start talking to each other. And the punchline is that the patients, the virtual patients, the AI patients also fill in questionnaires. And these are original questionnaires developed by clinical psychologists to answer clinical, to measure the quality of sessions, things like the working alliance, okay? And the punchline is that we show that this measurement, these questionnaires, are both reliable and valid. Okay, so reliability means that, over many conversations, we have actually very, very high reliability. So basically, all these questionnaires have a lot of questions, but the result is very consistent. So that's one thing which is very important. And the other is, of course, that we get validity. Okay, we get a statistically significant difference. The AI therapists distinguish between poor, mediocre, and expert therapists. Again, we don't tell them to rate them or something. We just tell them fill in these questionnaires, but we get significantly different results. So we are happy about this as a basic measurement of counseling quality. And some of you, again, might say, okay, so why didn't you go to use a mechanical Turk? You go on these things and you put a survey online and people get, I don't know, a few dollars to answer your survey or study. So we did try that. We tried it with 20 mechanical Turkers, and all of them failed. Okay, we put 3 questions. We put reverse questions. Okay, all of the mechanical Turks failed the inverted question, when you have to switch between 1 to 5 Likert scale to 5 to 1. And almost all of them failed the 3 question. So on the one hand, mechanical Turk, we say, is not useful for these kinds of study. On the other hand, ChatGPT is quite reliable, can be used as a surrogate patient. Okay, and of course, we did do a human study to validate further these virtual patients. Okay, Stav then went on to do another more technical study, which we don't need to get very much into, but the point was to say, okay, now we have a measurement. Okay, we have a metric, an automated metric, we can try developing all kinds of AI models as therapists, and we just plug in this metric, these virtual patients, and we get a score. And so we can answer all kinds of questions which are very interesting for the AI people, like how much training data do you need? What kind of training data? What is more important, the data or the size of the AI model? So the details are not very important in this, for this audience, but we show that we can use this metric to actually do AI studies. We don't need human studies. Okay. I'm exaggerating. Of course, you always want to have humans in the loop. Eventually, these products are for humans. But the idea is that you don't have to run and do a human study for everything you do, and you can move forward. And also, one thing that all the models learned is to be shorter. And this is, again, our clinical psychologist collaborator says, yes, of course, psychologists talk too much. Clinicians talk too much. So yes, one of the first things they learn is to basically have shorter responses and listen. Okay, and then, yes, I think I have some time. So then we took it further. And in this case, the student is Lior, and Moshe is a collaborator who's actually an expert in reinforcement learning. And we said, okay, now we want to take it further and focus on therapists that are also goal-oriented. Okay, they're not just next word predictors. It's not just about trying to say what an expert would have said, but also maybe try to strive towards a goal. And this is where, of course, reinforcement learning gets into the game. So for those of you who haven't been following the progress in AI, basically there was GPT-3. GPT-3 was an amazing AI model, but ChatGPT, which is GPT 3.5, the big breakthrough between this Model 3 and Model 3.5 was this RLHF, okay, reinforcement learning with human feedback. The idea is that it's not only about next word prediction, it's also about let's have humans in the loop, try to rate these responses that the model makes, okay? And again, the observation here is that humans don't know exactly to state rules or principles of what exactly they want from an AI system, but given two examples, very often they can say this is better than this. So it's all about preference data. In RLHF, basically the preference data is used as a reward signal, and the model, after it learns English next word prediction, it learns to satisfy specific goals. Now, Lior took this method with a few improvements of his own to our therapist. First of all, he used a simpler method called DPO, Direct Preference Optimization. Again, the technical details are not very important, but just to say that reinforcement learning is a fascinating area. It's also studied in neuroscience and psychology, but it's very complicated, very slow to learn, very complicated, very unstable. And DPO is a method that tries to, with a theoretical basis, say, look, the reward is in the preference data. It's enough that we have a lot of data and we have examples and we say this is better than this, and this is and the claim is that this is a more straightforward, efficient, simple version of RLHF. So first of all, you use DPO instead of RLHF. Of course, instead of humans in the loop, which is RLHF, the H is for humans, Lior said, no, I will use the oracle, I will use the virtual patients from STAV, okay? Remember, in the previous work, I showed you that we can trust these agents, these virtual patients, to rate the quality. So this is now, they are now the human in the loop, is now our virtual patients, okay? Please stop me and ask if you're interested and something is not clear. Okay, so we have the framework is as follows. The oracle is an AI, okay. Yeah, the oracle is an AI. Then there's two other AIs. This AI is the virtual patient, which basically in this case is a user. And we want to improve this third AI, which is the therapist. Okay, we start with a base therapist, and then the base therapist starts talking to this virtual patient, and the conversation goes through this trick called basically, it's a conversation, and then there's another improvement that Lior introduced, which I will tell you in brief, but basically you have a lot of conversations between the AI and the virtual patient. And now the Oracle, the third type of AI, rates the quality of the therapist. And this is used, you see, to gradually improve. Basically every 1,000 conversations, the AI is improved. Okay, and there's ways to do it very carefully. And Lior also did something simple but tricky, which is to say we're not only going to rate every sentence that the psychologist said, we're going to look ahead 5 sentences into the future. Okay, so we want to see if the AI psychologist could plan 5 steps ahead. Okay. And the good news is that this works. What you see here again is these 2 questionnaires, okay? And here is the average. What you see in blue is the base model. What you see in green is the simple DPO kind of trained preference model. And the yellow is the one with the look ahead. We see that for this questionnaire, the yellow is significantly better than the green, or in other words, looking ahead is significantly better. In this questionnaire, the difference is not statistically significant, but both of them are better than the base model. So again, this gives us a playground, I hope you realize, of measuring the quality of AI and also self-improving AI. Basically, we can stop in this process anytime we want and do a human study to make sure we didn't lose track. But this is the kind of things we can do to improve the dialogue qualities of these agents. And then, of course, we want to basically connect them to VR. By the way, the same kind of tricks and methods you can apply for nonverbal behavior. In fact, well, anyway, so you can use these techniques to improve the virtual humans we use. I think we will see more and more of these things. So I think it's going to be, I don't know, to me at least, and again, I'm happy to get your impressions, but to me, I think it will be a fundamentally different experience. Right now, people can do it by taking part in some experiments, but maybe sometime when the masses will use these kinds of VR devices, I think it will be a completely different experience interacting with these AIs as compared to the way you do it today with a keyboard, talking to ChatGPT or... okay, so we have started to do these studies in VR. An interesting sociological problem is that none of the AI students want to do VR, and vice versa. This is something for another study. But one of the examples that we said, and again, this is a study again from several years ago, done in collaboration with Mel and Bernard, or maybe a few others. Basically, again, you would say, even if I don't completely trust the AI to be an automated therapist, there's a lot of things it can do to help me with this session. So Mel and Mavi and Bernard and all these guys, they have this wonderful paradigm that I hope all of you have encountered, which is self-conversation in virtual reality, right? You can talk to yourself. I think Olaf also mentioned it in his talk. And then the question is, and Mel had some studies to show that this could also be beneficial for your well-being, depends on some context. But then, of course, sometimes you're stuck and you don't know. So you talk to yourself. You see yourself, of course, as an avatar. You look at yourself from the outside. You talk to yourself. Under some conditions, we think it's an amazing protocol. But sometimes maybe you're stuck and you don't know what to say to yourself. So at that time, we had a very simple idea. Let's have another AI that is not a therapist. It listens, but it tries to give you all kinds of suggestions how to get unstuck. So even if you are more careful, I think this is a perfectly good way to use social AI to encourage people in these kind of... you have to realize, Momi, you see here in the picture, Momi who ran this study, she's a clinical psychologist and she does it properly. It's not just a study. She brings students to the lab. She shows them videos of psychoeducation. They talk to themselves. Sometimes they cry. Sometimes they talk about very sensitive things. It's a very powerful experience. And we still wanted to introduce the AI and see if it can help with the experience. And, okay, so this is what the first version looked like. This is the session. Let's try to see a video.
I'm afraid of public speaking, and I would like to not be afraid.
Okay, this is Converself.
I'm afraid of public speaking, and I would like to not be afraid.
Or maybe an older version, so after you say it, you switch bodies and you see yourself saying that sentence to yourself.
Have you tried deep muscle relaxation?
And this was the AI, okay? Have you tried deep muscle relaxation?
Conversation by explaining the problem you've prepared to the counselor.
So if you notice, there's
I'm afraid of spiders, and there are a lot of spiders here.
Okay, Alon is not a very good actor, but anyway, there's a button which says AI, and people are supposed to press it, and then the AI kind of helps you in this.
I'm always afraid of spiders, and there are a lot of spiders here.
Now you are in the counselor body. This is your body. Answer as a counselor. What advice would you give to the person in front of you?
Okay, would it help if I talked to you about a movie instead?
Okay, so again, these are the days of.
Spiders is a very scary thing.
These are the days of GPT-3. Alon is not a very good actor because in practice, when Mommy did it with real patients, what happened is something very interesting. The sessions were so powerful that nobody, I think 1 out of 20 people, pressed the AI button. Okay, there's a button. You know that the button is for AI help. People were so overwhelmed with the self-conversation session that they didn't even bother to click the AI button. Okay? And so we built the next version, which was to put the kind of AI in the body of an avatar. And then it's also gaze activated. So basically, you know, you sit in front of yourself, and then if you turn your heads to that virtual person here, that person would provide the advice or how to, you know, let the conversation move along. Let's try to see a short video.
Hi, I've been experiencing some trouble at home because of my roommate. He doesn't clean, he's mean, and it makes me uncomfortable when I'm at home. Well, I'm sorry to hear that that's going on. Could you tell me a little bit more about what he's saying or doing that makes you feel uncomfortable? What do you consider mean with you and his relationship?
So I hope you understand what's going on. So this person the student first says what is bothering him as a student, then he switches body and he tries to help himself. And then if and when they choose, they can look at this other character sitting with them, in this case embodied as Albert Einstein, to provide assistance.
I think an example would be that he's loud, and me and my other roommates tell him that he's being loud and disruptive, and he talks back to us and he doesn't change anything. And that just, first of all, it ruins our sleep, and if we're working in our rooms, then it can be a problem for focus. And then it also just makes us feel bad that we're trying to be respectful and he isn't doing the same.
I'm sorry to hear that your roommate's loud behavior is causing disruptions and making you and your other roommates uncomfortable. It sounds like you've tried communicating with him about the issue, but he hasn't been receptive to your feedback. In this situation, I would suggest having a more formal conversation with your roommate. Be clear and assertive about how his behavior is impacting you and your other roommates. Try to come up with specific solutions and compromises that can help address the issue. For example, you could suggest that he keep his voice down after a certain hour, or that he spend more time in common areas of the apartment rather than his room when he wants to be loud. If the problem still persists after this conversation, it may be time to get a mediator involved or find a new living situation. It's important to prioritize your own well-being, and living in a space where you feel uncomfortable or disrespected is not healthy for anyone.
Again, so the point here is, I think I'll more or less wrap up here. The point of showing you this work is to say, look, it's not only about, when we think about the mental health crisis, I was going to show you another work that we're doing now with the war, but to be honest, I can't even talk about it now. So I think I'm going to wrap up here. But basically, the idea is when you think about AI technologies, AI with and without VR, trying to help people, it's not just about an automatic friend, a companion, an automatic therapist. There's many options. There's many social options. There's many options of putting in significant others, people that you choose, etc. And again, I'm sure, and we see it, today we see it in labs. I think, again, sooner or later we'll see it in the real world. Actually, we're seeing it in lab, we're seeing it in small applied projects outside the lab. When it's done with VR, it can be much more effective than GPT as a text agent. Okay, so I think I'm going to wrap up here. I hope you got the general story, and thanks a lot for the attention.
Okay, thanks very much. Questions? Yes, Yannick?
Hello, thank you for the talk. I have a comprehension question. Who Einstein is addressing? Okay. Me or me?
Okay, no, it's a confusing scenario, but you got it.
Because it seems it's talking to me on how to address, how I should address me, and so it seems it's counseling me.
Yeah. So
why do I need to tell this to the other?
Okay, you understood.
Yeah.
So basically, there's two you, and then there's Einstein. This is the protocol. If you forget about Einstein, this is what I was going to say. The protocol is already very convincing, but also very, very powerful. Okay. And I think the idea is that, and again, Mel and Mavi know much better about this, how to do it properly, but the idea is that it should be done in a way that's very clear to you, that one of them is you, and one of them is maybe, I think in the original study, it was Sigmund Freud. Okay? So then Einstein is addressing you, but the counselor, you as a counselor address Einstein. You say, how can you help this guy? And then Einstein helps the guy. But of course, other options are possible.
Why doesn't this say you should say to this guy that you should do that instead of you should do that?
Yeah, no. So in this case, I think, okay, this is the way we chose to do it. I think it makes sense because they are in the room. This Einstein is in the room, so you would feel very awkward if your therapist would say would start having this conversation behind your back. Okay, so it's part of the social environment. But I agree, these are questions, the study took a lot of time because we had to figure out all these things. Yeah, it's very difficult to get them right, so I agree.
Just to follow up from that, the video you showed at the end was quite insightful, but what was a bit worrying for me was the sort of almost patronizing advice that Einstein was giving, which is, well, you should do this, and could you, how did you generate that advice? Was it through the therapist, or could it be something that's a bit more nuanced than maybe you should go and find somewhere else to live in or something?
Yeah. No, I completely agree. So again, as I said, these studies are very, very difficult. And in general, when you do an automated therapist, of course you take extra care to try to tame it. But again, this is, even today with the best models, all these studies I'm showing you, of course, they are a few years old, and 1 year in AI is like 50 generations. So you cannot trust. These days it's becoming better. It's becoming better statistically. Statistically, the likelihood of the model saying something terrible is smaller, but still, when millions of people talk to these AIs, they could be unreliable. So you can do your best, either starting with a simple prompt, saying never be patronizing. Don't do this. 99% it will be okay. Again, if it's deployed in the real world, maybe 99 is enough, maybe not. We see, and this is why we said this is not an automated therapist. We only trust it as a kind of smart guy sitting in the room. But what I am concerned about is that I see that, I'm not sure if you have this expression in English, the horse has already left the barn. A lot of companies are already releasing these models and people use them. And you know,
but I think the self-conversation is something that has been around for a number of years and seems to be a very effective strategy. And maybe for the having the AI or the LLM, it could be more open-ended rather than telling you what to do. So there's been quite a bit of research saying, well, have you thought of this? So more of a Rogerian type therapist.
Yeah.
So I just wondered whether there's different approaches that aren't going to be become dated in 6 months' time.
No, I completely agree. I'm just sharing kind of our challenge as AI people, that it's really, really difficult to control these models, even if we know what we expect them. And this is why I showed you the structured dialogue and all these other options.
Okay, one last question.
Yeah, thanks. This was very interesting, and I agree with the other person that the last video didn't feel very therapy-like. It was more like, oh, how do I do this? Here's how we do it. It's kind of question-answer type of conversation. But also, I understand this is not like the final word in this field, so it's evolving and it will get better. I have two questions, very quick. One is, have you tried the voice-to-voice type of modalities where you don't need to say, oh, okay, I finished speaking, I submit my question, answer my question, but it's more like direct, blah, blah, with interjections, you can stop, and it's more maybe interactive, I guess, but it's, because it's much quicker and less latency. So one question. Another question is, I think a human therapist really adapts to whoever they're speaking. So they have like a potential diagnosis in mind, or they have a potential characteristic of a person. So this person is depressive. Okay, how can I speak with them because they're depressive? So have you tried in the maybe training, introduce some kind of personas or symptomatics, which would make this more, adaptive to the personality?
Mm-hmm. So I want to answer the second question first, and I hope that we will forget the first one. So you see, what you are saying is you are starting to think how a human would design the ultimate therapist. What we are interested in, what I am interested in, and this is what we see in AI, is that it's not always the best strategy to have humans decide to tell the AI what to do, okay? You can Google this thing called the bitter lesson, okay? So allegedly, the history of AI, and again, these are all things that are controversial and you can argue about them. Allegedly, the history of AI is a history of 70 years where we see that we don't need humans to tell the AI what to do. We need to find out the right method, the right data sets, the right context, and give as few information to the model and let it find. So for me, it would be more interesting to see that the AI would figure out that for this patient, it would have to be, and that's much more tricky. Okay, so you can come as a human and say, okay, if this patient is suffering from this problem, please do this. For me, it would be interesting for the AI to learn it by itself.
Okay, so I think we will leave it here to keep on time. And so thanks very much, Doron.